Ma me fana say ma PENDREAM TV. PENDREAM TV there osia dem yopo.
Felix Kwakyi, a spokesperson to the presidency, has also come out to clarify some issues pertaining to the swearing in of some of the appointees and also reveal the next plan of JM. Without much ado, I would like you to join me listening to what he said into detail. This station still remains PENDREAM TV, the only channel that brings you the best and latest updates in politics. If you are new here, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, like and also share to other members to watch as well. You can also send a voice note on our WhatsApp number, which is 0277 128 777. Thank you. Join me listening to what he said into detail. We'll be right back.
Respective sectors. It is precisely because of the scale of the problems that I chose you from among the many qualified people to serve as ministers in this government. It will not be business as usual. I have absolute confidence in your ability to get the job done and achieve measurable results that will turn the situation around and free Ghanaians from the clutches of poverty and suffering into which they've been landed. There will be no place for disrespect of the very people who elected us to serve. Their needs and suffering are real, and these realities are not to be denied by you. Your duty is to acknowledge the problems and challenges and work to overcome them. In economy, the people of Ghana are looking up to you, Dr. Forsen, to reduce inflation and make life more affordable, reduce the cost of living. They're looking up to you to bring our debt level to bring our national debt to sustainable levels. They're looking to you to stabilize our currency, and they're looking to you to rein in the deficit so that we can achieve macroeconomic stability. Our Attorney General will be required to reform our justice system to make it fair and transparent to all Ghanaians. You'll also be responsible for holding people accountable and making sure that the sword of justice goes after people who have misappropriated the resources of Ghanaians. One of the major tasks you would have to undertake is to shepherd the National Constitutional Validation Conference in order that we can begin amendment of our Constitution to make it a living document for the future. To you, Mr. Eric Opoku-Agric, Ghanaians are looking for food security, and they're looking for cheap and affordable food to fill their stomachs. And probably one of the most difficult and complex sectors, and that is education. The Honorable Haruna Idrisu is supposed to work for the people of Ghana to ensure quality education and to ensure that we equip our young people with the skills that they need to go into the world of work. And one of your first responsibilities will be to superintend the National Review Conference on Education, to bring stakeholders together to dialogue on how to improve our educational outcomes. To you, the Honorable Minister of Energy, Mr. John Ablai Jinapon, Ghanaians are looking for stable and efficient power supply. They're looking to you to accelerate our upstream and downstream petroleum sectors in order that Ghanaians can reap the benefit of the potential that God has given us. They're also looking to you to manage the energy sector debt and be able to remove it as an albatross around the neck of our economy.
The question is, all those in favor that motion listed 10 in today's order paper, all those in favor of that motion, say aye. All those against, say no. Honorable members, it is obvious the ayes have it. The motion is hereby adopted. and that this Honorable House has approved His Excellency's the President nomination of Honorable Ahmed Ibrahim as Minister Designate for Local Government, Chieftaincy and Religious Affairs. Honorable Dr. Agnes Na Momolate as Minister Designate for Gender, Children and Social Protection. And Honorable Elizabeth Ofosu Ejare as Minister Designate of Trade, Agribusiness and Industry. Abra Jifa Gomashi as Minister Designate for Tourism, Culture and Creative Arts.
So far, 11 of President John Dramani Mahama's ministers have been sworn in to begin work. Yesterday, we saw a number of them as well being sworn in by the president. But then again, he gives them a charge, expectations that the Ghanaian people have of them. Now, this morning, the president is committing to that 60 ministers. It's indicated that some ministries would not have deputies. Also, he has indicated that he is going to have the leanest and most efficient government as we have had it in this country. Well, there are those who are pointing to the public service and its entire structure and what has to be done as well alongside this particular efficiency that the president wants to achieve. In the midst of all that, many continue to ask questions of what exactly are the major considerations in the appointment by John Dramani Mahama, and which ministries are not going to have the deputies. And that's what a number of you are also having on your minds. Well, guess what? We would have the answers to all the questions this morning on Key Point, as always. The key issues that are of concern to you, the Ghanaian people, is what we will talk about here on Key Point. My guest later on the show is the spokesperson to President John Dramani Mahama. He is a Minister of State designate. He's a Member of Parliament for the Abrasebo Kwamankese constituency. Talking about none other than Felix Kwakyi will be joining us to answer a number of questions this morning here on Key Point. What kind of country was handed over to them? The status of Ghana. Because we were here when at some point in 2017 we were told that the meat had been eaten to the bone. And at some point, the bone was nowhere to be found as well. But then again, what is the state of affairs now? We've heard bits and pieces, but you, the Ghanaian people, are demanding the details of the state of affairs so that we'll know exactly where we are and where we are going beyond the politics. So we'll have a conversation this morning here on Key Point. Wanted man in Ghana now, together with Dr. Callistus Mahama. People wake up in the morning checking whether you have released a white statement or Dr. Callistus Mahama has released a green. Do you know that your name is being mentioned in some prayer platforms? You know about it?
Well, I'm not sure of being a wanted man nor being the prayer topic for anybody. But a mere conduit for government information. So as and when I am instructed to put out some communication, I do so. Or as and when it becomes necessary to engage the public on any number of government activities, I do so. But we only serve at the pleasure of the Ghanaian people.
Indeed.
And it is important that the government creates pathways to engage in the very people that it is supposed to be superintending. Whose affairs it's supposed to be superintendent, I should say. Mm-hmm. And that is what we do. It is not intended to give anybody any palpitations or make anybody uneasy or
after you put an emoji of two eyes on your social media. Just
Which means what? He's watching or what?
People to watch out.
What it is that social media is now the new frontier. And Professor Jampo is very active on social media, so he appreciates what I'm saying. There's a way that you need to engage the people there in order to sustain their interest in what government is doing. In the past, it was you guys in the traditional media who held sway. If I wanted to issue a statement, I would have to type it out, print it, put it in an envelope and drop it at your premises. And pray and hope that you give it some publicity. Now, these days, you cannot do that. There are many who do not tune into traditional media. They are on social media. And for that reason, you need to find ways that enable you to communicate to them. So it is that innovation that we are tapping into to reach as many people as possible. And so far, the reception has been encouraging. It shows that Ghanaians are in tune with what government is doing, and they want to follow closely what has been happening. And we are happy to share information to the extent that we have it with the people, so that they know exactly how their mandate is being utilized.
Indeed.
Let me say to Felix that, Felix, you should admit that so far the palpitations and the stress and pressures that people who are expecting political appointment are going through, I mean, they are higher than the palpitations and stress they go through in the lead up to elections. People are so, even those of us who are sitting at somewhere, people call you, please, can you talk to somebody for me for MMDC? I said, but who am I? Why are you calling? People are so, people are not sleeping.
It is
sleepless nights.
It is human nature.
There are many, as President Mahama noted yesterday in his address, in his remarks at the swearing-in ceremony of the ministers. People are eager to serve. Many people are highly qualified, highly skilled. They have the enthusiasm, the passion. They have ideas that they want to put at the disposal of their country. But it has become necessary to prune down the size of government, because President Mahama emphasizes efficiency over numbers. And in fact, it is a demand of the Ghanaian people. We had the bizarre situation where, under the previous administration, President Akufo-Addo decided that we needed 125 ministers to run this country. When questions were raised, he said that the job at hand was so huge that he needed a legion of ministers to carry it out. And yet, the outcomes showed...
Even though the battle is the Lord's.
Well, so they said. But at the end of the day, when the reckoning was done, we found out that they had delivered the poorest form of governance this country has ever seen. So it is clear right there and then that what you do in government has no correlation with the numbers that you use to do it. President Mahama explained that there are two strands to this. The first one is that tangible savings can be made. If you had 125 ministers and now you are going to get 60, it means that you've chopped off 65. And the money that would have gone into sustaining these ministers and facilitating their work and ensuring that they have the conditions to work with will be saved. And it can be channeled into other more pressing expenditure. Of course, I'm not one of those who will sit on TV and claim that it is so significant as to change our fortunes overnight. But President Mahama explained that it also has symbolic value. It tells the people that you are going to be judicious with their resources and that governance is not about you, it is about them. And that you are not there just to feed fat. You are not there to treat the public purse as a family heirloom or the spoils of war, so that if everybody has contributed towards winning, then everybody must share in the national kitty. That is not what President Mahama believes should be done. And so when you do that, you send a signal, so that if tomorrow, for any reason, you have to call on Professor Jampo or my friend Martin to tighten their belt a bit to help the country, they know that their resources will be used judiciously and that it will not be used to take care of the creature comforts of those who govern. So that symbolism is extremely important, and that is why, by and large, Ghanaians have been receptive to the idea that we'll have the smallest, the leanest, and most efficient government in the history of Ghana.
I see. But you see, over time, and it's good that you talk about the matter of efficiency as well, because beyond the numbers, there's that question about efficiency, ensuring that you are not just reducing the numbers from 30 to 23 ministries and effectively 60 ministers, as the president reiterated that he's committed to, no matter what. What measures have been put in place to ensure that there is efficiency, especially in reduction of expenditure, because that's another aspect as well. You're not just reducing the numbers. There's government expenditure that was huge.
That is true.
That
Now, you have to define, Professor Jampo is a academic. You have to define efficiency. It's simply achieving maximum output for minimum input. If you put
achieving more with little.
Yeah. Exactly. So what happens is that you don't need a large government structure. Of course, it's a vexed question. There have been discussions for years about even the size of the public and civil service. There are some who argue that for a country our size, having close to 650 to 700,000 civil servants is huge. But of course, there are also other considerations. That you simply cannot come into power and dismiss all of the people to go and sit at home, especially in these harsh economic times. So you have to find a way to ensure that you lessen the burden on the public purse. The easiest way to do that is to look at political appointees, because invariably, the circumstances of their employment and the kind of things they do and the resources they require are often bigger than what the average civil servant requires to do the job. Of course, you can also argue that it is because they take greater responsibility. Civil servants will remain. In many instances, whether progress is made or we experience retrogression, civil servants will remain. But the political appointees pay the price, as the NPP found out to their dismay in the just ended elections. And the way to do that is to carry out restructuring. Sometimes you chop and change. You change the way that things are done. And that's what President Mahama has been doing. Take the Information Ministry, for instance. He explained this week he met officials from the Institute of Public Relations, and he explained what he wants to do with the Information Ministry.
I see, because now that's one of the ministries that you scrapped.
Yes, it's been scrapped.
And there was
it's been scrapped. So the Information Ministry has a number of agencies. I mean, two of the key ones are the Information Service Department, where the chunk of employees of that ministry work. And then there's a Ghana News Agency. There are other agencies like the Ghana Publishing Corporation and what have you. For budgetary purposes, Graphic Communications Group, the New Times Corporation and others, Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, all fall under, but that is only for budgetary purposes. Strictly speaking, they are under the National Media Commission.
Right.
Now, because of this agreement, there's a whole ministry dedicated to coordinating and disseminating government information.
That's
now, as I indicated, in the past, you needed to do things a certain way because of where technology was.
Right.
Now, technology is so advanced that what 10 people could do can be done with the press of a button. Yeah. That then means that you have to do things that accommodate this emerging trend whilst ensuring that the deliverables, the outcomes, are even superior than before. So President Mahama has said that rather than have a ministry that has a whole office with chief directors and all manner of directors and staff, he is moving it under the presidency, under what he describes as the Minister of State's Government Communication, which is me, essentially. The plan is to restructure ISD into what we call a Government Communication Office, because essentially they are government employees. Their duty is to disseminate government information. In the past, they used to use cinema vans. When you go to a district, they have district information officers whose duty is to collect information, pass it on, ensure that the work of the assemblies reach the people and what have you. That has become obsolete with emerging and evolving technology. So we can have a more efficient system where ISD is branded into the Government Communication Office, where technology is deployed, which then means that you don't need that number of people. So at a point, you stop recruiting into ISD.
Okay.
And then you cut down the numbers to ensure that you have a functional team that is able to deliver the goods. The GNA, perhaps one of the most credible news outlets, they hardly get it wrong because they have highly skilled, highly trained professionals who emphasize quality, who are able to get you the news in ways that others are not able to do. How do you restructure such an agency to fit into modern times? But all of that can happen under the president. So all you need is just one office where I sit and coordinate all these activities. Then there are the agencies, departments, whose messaging and communications must align with government's policy and philosophy. So you need a system that runs this system, this arrangement, to ensure that whatever they put out there reflects the thinking, the policy propositions of government, without necessarily interfering in the day-to-day activities of the agencies themselves. Give them sufficient autonomy as to enable them do what is necessary at any particular point. If it's at the presidency, you don't need to incur the sort of expenditure that you would have to incur if there's a whole ministry dedicated to this. And so these are some of the ways in which the president believes we can make tangible savings, ensure efficiency, and get the job done with much fewer numbers. And I think that by and large, the people of Ghana appreciate this, because for a long time, it was a matter of concern. The former government turned a blind eye. Every and anybody who was in the MPP was given a position in government. Some of the agencies were packed. At the presidency alone, there were in excess of 330 political appointees. And you wonder what exactly they were doing there. Because I now operate from the presidency. I go there, and there's even barely space for that number of people. So you wonder where those people were,
at some point
or whether they were actually doing the work.
At some point, there was almost 1,000.
No. They are civil servants. What happens is that the presidency, the presidency has some agencies under it. The presidency has some agency under it. So staff are drawn from existing state institutions. They are civil servants. They could be deployed elsewhere. So they are not political appointees. So the numbers that we left in 2016 were not significantly different from what the MPP used. What created a spike was the sheer number of political appointees, 330. We had less than 100 in our previous guys between 2009 and 2016. President Mama intends to do the same. In fact, it will be much smaller.
You much smaller, meaning what? Less than 100?
I mean, from all indications, as I speak to you, the number of people working at the presidency now, in terms of political appointees, are less than 10.
Less than
That's if
10.
you consider all advisors and everybody else who works, including myself, who is supposed to be a minister of state. It's less than 10 as we speak. Of course, as and when, eventually, of course, the full complement of the government will be but it will be nowhere near the number that the MPP used to. And you see,
which was over 350.
Over 330. And Honorable Ablakwa was instrumental in unearthing this. And I'm sure you discussed it on this program on many occasions. So that, in my view, constituted unnecessary waste of public resources. Because these people were drawing salaries, they had to be facilitated, they were given vehicles, fueled and all that, which were fueled and all that. And did not necessarily bode well for the public purse. At the same time, we didn't see any outcomes that were extraordinary from what had been achieved before. To even, if it was the case that you have 125 ministers, and yes, the outcomes are so monumental, Ghanaians could perhaps give you a break, even if they had misgivings, and say that maybe you have justified the numbers. But the outcomes were completely poor, and therefore did not make a case at all for having that number of people in Ghana. So President Mama is minded by that. As I walked in, I heard you and Professor Jampo discuss the posturing of government officials.
Yes, and hold on to that point about the posturing, and I'm going to come back to it, because you talk about the efficiency. What's going to happen to the ministries, the staff at the ministries that you scrapped? So, for instance, with the explanation you've given now, it appears the functions of some of the functions of the defunct information ministry will now come under your ministry.
Exactly.
That's the ministry. Minister of State in charge of government communications.
Yes.
You would have some functions of the defunct information ministry. But then how
those
about
ones that are relevant, absolutely necessary for the running of government information machinery will be retained. So yes, the rest can be sent elsewhere. Because when you do another, you will find that there are gaps elsewhere. Just that, for instance, if you bring 300 people to the presidency, and yet there are agencies that are also staffed, they need critical staff, but they don't have it. You are not being efficient. You are not utilizing human resources in the way that you should. So some of them will be sent elsewhere, because you also do not want to come in and just dismiss people.
So you are not laying off these?
No, nobody will be laid off.
Staff.
Nobody. What may happen is that there are some of the agencies where recruitment will not be carried out into, because their functions are becoming obsolete. You don't need additional human resource. Nobody who is in now is going to be dismissed because there has been some restructuring. But in some instances, there wouldn't be additional recruitment into those agencies. Recruitment will be elsewhere that human resource is required to run. So the effects may be seen a bit further down the line, but we need to start from somewhere. It is not an easy thing to do. And I know, as I have interacted with some staff of the information ministry, they have expressed concern. Some of them were uncertain. It is natural, because they don't know what their fate will be. They also feel that there's a certain emotional attachment they have developed towards the work they've done over the period, and they've built something. So that change, which appears drastic, may, as it were, pull the rug from under their feet. But they have been reassured that their expertise, their skills will be needed elsewhere. And so they can bring the same passion, the same commitment, and the same ability to carry out their responsibilities on other functions of government. But ultimately, the aim is to build a modern, functional civil and public service that is responsive to the needs of the Ghanaian people, even as we try to adapt governance to modern trends.
I see. Yes. Now, how about the other ministries that have been scrapped?
Sure.
The National Security Ministry, there were staff assigned to that ministry.
Yes.
That the ministry.
Yes, but again, it is not one of the ministries that has large numbers because of their best specialists.
So those will also be reassigned.
You see, the national, unfortunately, it was the advent of the MPP that introduced this ragtag team of bandits who hold goaters and misconduct themselves and call themselves national security operatives and what. You see, it is a ministry whose function primarily involves coordinating the activities of security agencies. What happens is that as the situation evolves, you have the need for multi-sectorial collaboration to address specific security challenges.
Right.
So you have someone who is an intermediary, who has capacity to, first of all, gather intelligence and ascertain what responses are needed. It is then their duty to ensure that the specialized security agencies who ordinarily have specific functions come together to address certain. So, for instance, in the Nkwanta situation, it happened exactly a week ago, I believe. Around this time last week, I had received calls from the National Security Coordinator. He wanted to brief me on what he had picked up at Nkwanta. So my immediate question is that, what have you done? He says, no, I have immediately coordinated a response from the police and military who are on their way. We will send additional men. If the military alone were left to this, they may falter in terms of their ability to collaborate with other organizations. So you need a coordinator. In 1998, I believe, an act of parliament was passed to create the position of a national security minister. The objective or the thinking behind that was to clarify the reporting lines so that somebody can be held responsible for the activities of that ministry. What happens is that in parliament, those who come to the floor of parliament to answer questions are ministers.
Yes.
And deputy ministers in some instances. It is not everybody who the law allows to come to parliament. The most you will get is a committee sitting or some specific hearing. But it was thought wise to have somebody who has responsibility for that portfolio so that there can be some accountability lines that tie into the governance arrangement. But President Mahama believes that we can do away with that. All that you need to do is to assign that reporting responsibility to either the interior or defense minister, who in any event have some linkage. So what President Mahama believes is needed is a national security coordinator with a small outfit and the necessary facilities and resources to be able to do this. And then you have an advisor who, based on experience, is then able at presidential level, because the security strategy is entirely different from security coordination. So you may need advice on other matters that fall outside of the purview of the national security coordinator. But if you don't have a ministry, you don't need the same amount of resources to run that outfit. So it saves you some, because you will need a chief director for the ministry, you will need some critical staff, you will need auxiliary staff, and you need some resources to get the place running. But if you don't have a ministry, all of that is saved.
Will now be saved.
Then you consolidate the work that existing agencies are doing. So that is exactly what President Mahama envisages. But of course, I anticipate that it may become necessary to amend the law so that it does not appear as if there is some, if you like, violation of it. But as a country, we should leave room for reform and change. Sometimes we should not tie ourselves down. You see, the rules and laws are made for man. If it becomes prohibitive in terms of enabling you to carry out your responsibility or achieving efficiency, there's nothing wrong with looking for alternative arrangements, even as you take steps to rectify the legal or clarify the legal position. Yes.
It's important to make that point, because then that was another conversation that came up sometime within the week. I intend to spend some time with Felix Kwakyi for good reasons. He's going to be living out at some point. But let me acknowledge.
You wanted to say something about
yes. Because I want to run through because I don't intend to run through all the other ministries that have been scrapped. The understanding I get is that this principle of not laying off the staff in these ministries that were scrapped, railways, development, sanitation and water resources, public enterprises, national security, information ministry, all these, you're not going to lay off the staff,
Yes,
even though the ministries have been scrapped. You're going to share them around.
What happens is that, for instance, take the transport sector, which was carved out into 3 ministries. So those who work there were original staff of the transport ministry. Except that once you create a ministry, you will have need for additional staff, mostly political appointees.
Okay.
And not civil servants.
I see.
Understand me? The civil service has a system through which they do recruitment on the basis of needs. But what compounds the problem is the top-heavy arrangement where political appointees are added onto the structure. So the moment you divide the ministry, you will need to fill these. Sometimes you require consultants. Yeah. Sometimes you require some expertise because you have changed the scope of that ministry a bit. It does not necessarily yield additional improvements. For instance, in the S1 Mahama administration, it was Madame Jifar Ativo and Mrs. Resba Mutari who were minister and deputy respectively. But they achieved so much, I dare say far more than what the 3 separate ministries that President Akufo-Addo created achieved. President Akufo thinks that they should be put, the moment you put them together, you will not need certain staff. Those ones can be dispensed of because they are not civil servants.
They're political.
They are political. Some of them are consultants, some of them are advisors. Their services may not immediately be necessary because you will find that once you do the merger, you will discover that there is some in-house expertise that can do the same things that those that you're going to hire to bring. Also, you cut down on the facilities that you need to give to the additional individuals that you've brought. The minister, the deputy, political appointees, and what have you, that function in these ministries. Again, I must stress that President Mahama is not taking a populist view about this. He's not saying that merely by doing this, you will save billions. That overnight transforms the village that Martin comes from. That's not what he's saying. Yes, there are tangibles, even if it is one minister. At the very least, you don't have to buy a 4-wheel drive, which these days costs anything between $80,000 to $120,000. You don't have to pay the minister a 4-year salary. That is assuming that he remains there for 4 years. You don't have to take care of the additional perks. He may have an assistant or 2. You don't have to pay them. You don't have to pay his driver. You do not have to pay other consultants and people that you bring in. In fact, you don't need to find them a building that you maintain. You don't have to pay for utilities and all of that. That may perhaps build 1 school or 2. But the message you send as a government is that you are not prepared to feed fat.
Okay.
On Professor Jampo's taxes or Martin's taxes.
Right.
So that tomorrow, Professor Jampo should contribute a little more to the national kitty. He does not feel that the money is going down the drain. He will be far more motivated to do so because he knows that the money will go into only those things that matter to him and his family and his household.
I see.
Yes.
But you have some ministries that some have signaled that sends the duplicated roles, which really doesn't seem to bring some clarity. And that's why one of the reasons why I brought you here this morning. Why do you have a Minister of State for Climate Change and Sustainability?
Yeah,
I'm coming.
Okay.
And then you have a Minister for Environment, Science and Technology. Why separate climate change and sustainability from the Environment Ministry, which is really the broader ministry that will take care of all of these?
Yeah, first of all, we need to situate that discussion within the context of the specific commitment President Mahama made about the size of government. He said he will run a government with 60 ministers. That's what he's going to do. As we speak, there are 18 slots to be filled.
Yes.
So he is permitted, within the context of the specific promise, to arrange government in a way that enables him achieve his objective as president and fulfill the promise that he made to the people of Ghana. So if, say, after he has put in place the full complement of his ministers, he exceeds the number, then you may want to point out these additional positions and point about duplications. You see, now climate change is on the front burner. In many countries, it is the number 1 issue. Powerful countries are gravitating towards putting in more resources and more human resources to ensure that we overcome this challenge. So the Minister of State responsible for climate change is an advisor on policy at presidential level, much the same way as the National Security Advisor operates. But he ties or he fits into the 60 ministers President Mahama promised. President Mahama thought through it and determined what he needed. And mind you, these days, presidents are required to show commitment to the issue of climate change. So there must be in-house expertise every time. The minister is also an advisor, but he's also an implementer and executor of government's environmental policy, if you like, climate change policy.
I see.
But the one at the presidency offers day-to-day presidential advice on what has to be done, what should not be done, and will help the president.
To necessarily be a minister of state.
Well, he also needs sufficient gravitas and authority to be able to carry out specific functions. For instance, if I was not made a minister in charge of government communication, I cannot go to Parliament to defend the budget of the ISD, which will now be known as the Government Communication Office or GNA or GBC, because I will not have the authority. You can't send a spokesperson to Parliament to do that. You will have to send another minister, but you will only be burdening the minister because all the sectors are troubled and you require specific focus. So I would urge that discussion is situated within the context of the specific problem. The man says you will use 60, assuming that for purpose of argument only, he has 10 ministers specifically responsible for education alone. You understand me? He can always tell you that it is because of this specific issue that I need somebody who will deal with Professor Jampo's group, UTAG, who every now and then, as government through demanding one improved condition of service or the other. I need somebody to take care of Tibet. I need somebody to take care of basic education. Ultimately, if you put everything together, does it burden the taxpayer now more than it did before? To the extent that it doesn't, I believe that the president must be given room to do what he deems to be necessary. A time will come for an assessment of the output of these individuals that he selected. It is at that stage that you can make a case as to whether or not it was necessary to have this in the first place. So I think that the output would determine or would give indication about the propriety of that position. But as we speak, the president has not gone beyond the commitments he made. There are some ministries that will not get deputies.
Which ministries are those?
Well, at this stage, I'm not at liberty to disclose, but in the fullness of time, in the next few days, that would be resolved, and you will see. The president believes that, yes, every ministry is important, but there are some, for instance, education. There are problems in that sector alone. In fact, if you take basic education alone, where we have close to 5 to 6 million pupils, the problems there are huge. You have a situation where there are close to 1.5 million Ghanaian school children who do not have access to desks. So they have to sit on cement blocks or they have to lie on their bellies to receive instruction. That alone is a nightmare, requiring significant attention and resources.
Yes.
You come to senior high school. The first day that President Mahama took office, he was confronted with a statement from CHAS demanding 3 billion Ghana cedis, which is owed them. Then, before he could catch his breath, we were forced to enter a meeting with the delegation from the GES, who came to complain about the lack of food in the senior high schools. And I'm sure very soon Professor Jampo and his group will strike to demand improved conditions of service. So this is a sector that is heavy. Indeed, it is not for nothing that it takes a chunk of government's budget. And in fact, education everywhere in the world is the #1 guzzler of public resources. Take the health ministry, for instance. Look at the state of health. As we speak, there is some cholera outbreak, which has gone under the radar, and I'm surprised that you in the media are not focusing on it.
No, don't say we. You have not been following what we're doing.
Oh, I've been following, but it has not been given the same prominence as before. It is understandable. There are other matters.
No, we've been talking about it.
I understand. I'm not. I concede, but I'm making the point that perhaps, for purpose of even public education alone, you should highlight it a bit more. That is a suggestion to you that you can incorporate in your work. You understand me? If you come to that sector, there are high-headed problems. As we speak, the Agenda 111, which the previous government made noise about, at the transition team meetings, we discovered that only 3 had been completed. Even then, they are not functional. As we speak, they cannot admit.
The president says 70%.
No, they cannot admit patients, and so none of them can admit patients today. Then we discovered that we need a colossal $1.4 billion, which is close to 30 billion Ghana cedis to complete them. So it is the headache of Honorable Akando when he takes office to think about how he's going to manage this. And then there's also the issue of the NHIS, which suffers chronic non-release of funds. And he has 8 million to 10 million subscribers breathing down his neck, demanding healthcare. So he has to take care of this. Go to energy. And sometimes I have to have sympathy for my brother, Honorable Jinapo. The first day he was called by the president to a meeting, even at the time he had not been nominated yet.
Yes.
I was in that meeting. We were told by Gridco and the other technical guys that to assure constant power supply, we need $200 million to make arrangements for fuel purchases. And this is a government that had been in power for only one day.
$200 million.
$200 million. That is assuming that the WAPCO, West African Gas Pipeline, are not able to meet the deadline or their own timeline of 1 month to fix the pipeline. We have to extend it by another month. That is making us, I'm sure Professor Jampo will kick me for using this expression, assurance double sure. And that is ensuring that we do not suffer any slippages in the event that the timelines are not met. You need $200 million. In addition to this, ECG alone has operated in a way that has left you with a debt of $2.5 billion. $2.5 billion today is close to 40 billion Ghana cedis. So there's a debt over. Indeed, I was in another meeting with IPPs. About 4 or 5 different IPPs showed up. When each of them got up to speak, they were owed hundreds of millions of dollars. They were indicating that their creditors even had to give them some breather. They said because of the election and transition, they were going to give them a few weeks respite. Very soon, they will call in their investments. And government owes them so much money. They alone are owed $1.8 billion.
The IPPs?
IPPs, $1.8 billion.
So this is different from the $2.5 billion.
The $2.5 billion is the general debt, indebtedness in the sector.
Okay, so this
then there's the issue of the downstream sector, where you have to constantly keep tabs of fuel supply. There's ECG, which is a governmental behemoth that lost 23 billion Ghana cedis in the previous year. You look at their balance sheet and they incur losses 6 billion, 5 billion. When ECG buys power from the IPPs through Gridco, and they want to distribute, for every $100 of electricity that they distribute, $40 is lost. So they have a 40% inefficiency rate, leading to these huge losses. So the energy minister has to address it. And then these days, he's been given additional responsibility to manage the green transition, which simply means that we are moving away from the use of fossil fuels. So we have to integrate our systems to be able to accommodate, renewable sources of energy. So it is a new frontier that we have to broach. And yet, even in the old system, there are massive problems that he needs to contend with. So that is a sector that should not surprise you if a deputy is assigned to. Look at agriculture. It is huge. About 2 million or so Ghanaians are involved in fishing alone. Another 3 to 5 are believed to be involved in agriculture. The MPP claims to have spent between 3 to 5 billion Ghana cedis on planting for food and jobs. In the end, there wasn't much food, or at least there wasn't much affordable food, and no jobs too were in sight. So government has to reconstruct this sector. Look at communications, for instance. It's also a huge sector involving regulation of high technology-based companies. These days, there's something called DTT, which has revolutionized the way that you do your broadcasting.
Yes.
Then there are the telecom companies.
Digital terrestrial television.
Every now and then, there are sparks between the companies and government. Yes. Because regulating them is not easy. These are huge, rich multinationals who can command significant resources, sometimes even over and above what government has.
Yes.
And dealing with them requires a certain level of capacity. Look at the, the tourism sector, which is one of the biggest sources of employment for our country. Look at water, for instance. These days, there's a Galamsey, which is threatening the ability of the water companies to produce potable water for all of us. Even in the sporting arena, these days, there's little to be enthused about as a Ghanaian sports fan. And I'm the #1 supporter of the Black Stars. But we performed abysmally in the AFCON qualifier. In fact, we didn't even perform at all. It was not even abysmal. We didn't perform at all, actually, because we failed to qualify. for the AFCON.
Yes.
And many Ghanaians have begun to lose interest in what the national teams do. These days, I used to claim to be a House of Oak supporter. I don't even know one player of Accra House of Oak. Neither do I know one player of Kotoko. Because sports is essentially dead in this country. So even rekindling public interest in sports to support our national teams is an arduous task.
I see.
And you know the bottlenecks that exist in that sector. It's a long-standing banana peel for many ministers. And therefore, it requires a certain level of skill. So it is not all the ministries,
I see.
in spite of the importance of each and every one of them, that at this moment, President Mahama deems necessary to get a deputy. But some, because of, first of all, their size and scope, and the level of problems they face, will require some. So that will be done. And in due course, President Mahama will put out the names for parliamentary consideration, after which we will then finally have the full complement of government or any other additional staff that the president wants to bring to the presidency to help the work.
But he's still going to stick to the 60. That one.
After that one, it is not negotiable.
So because you mentioned a number of ministries, at least, that we know, based on what you have said, that they will definitely have deputies.
No, I haven't said they will definitely. I said don't be surprised. I only explained the amount of work that has to. So I have not said
all
that.
All things being equal.
At all costs, each of them will have. I would not be surprised.
You will not be surprised. We should not be surprised if they are great education.
The determination will be made based on objective parameters. So
because if you look at the maths itself, obviously it goes without saying that not all the ministries should have deputies.
In fact, President Mahama has actually said it himself.
Indeed, there are 16 regional ministers that have been filled already. The 23, even if you multiply that by 2, that's about 46. Plus the 16 is already 62. And you're adding the 3 ministers of state, including yourself, that's 65. So would we have, for instance, deputy regional ministers?
I doubt that we would. Even President Akufo-Addo, with this behemoth of a government, did not have deputy regional ministers. I do not expect that we would.
Okay.
Yes.
So that is at least...
Unless there is some extraordinary case made for a particular region, depending on its size and the kind of work that needs to be done. Yes. You know, some regions to have real economic weight, like Greater Accra, Ashanti region, Western region, Eastern region, and the Northern region. They have real economic weight. And some of them deal with complex challenges in terms of sanitation and what have you. So it's entirely possible that if a consideration is made on the basis of needs, that a deputy is, and why not? But I don't foresee, based on the conversation that have gone on, that there will be deputy regional ministers, unless something dramatic happens. Yeah.
You touched briefly on a number of the problems, the challenges that you inherited, because I see, for instance...
Not to cut you, in fact, there's nowhere that there's more challenge than the finance ministry itself.
The finance ministry?
Already, the finance ministry is the nerve center of government. In fact, everything passes through there. And so, some governance experts believe that the finance minister is almost often the de facto prime minister of every government, because everything goes through him. So, even in normal times, you would require help for the minister. Sometimes there are 2, sometimes there are 3. There's somebody in charge of budget. That person is the one who has to contend with contractors, suppliers, everybody that government owes, because he sees to the implementation of the budget.
Okay.
But we are just in the throes of Ghana's worst economic meltdown in decades. As I speak to you, on 2nd January, we paid $364 million in debt servicing. At the end of February, we are required to pay 6.1 billion Ghana cedis in debt servicing. After next year, we have to pay 180 billion in debt servicing. And this is for a country whose budget is slightly above 200 billion. So what it means is that all the taxes you and I pay, and everything else that we do in this country, that goes into our budget, all of it will be used to pay debt servicing, because of the debt default,
and the suspension period has ended.
So you can imagine what the finance minister must feel when he stares down that dark barrel, where everything he mobilizes next year will be used to service debt. Because if we don't do it, we'll default again. If we default, it will be catastrophic. It will be the end of our economy as we know it.
That's 180 billion.
180 billion for debt servicing alone, because the previous government was too happy to borrow, but didn't have capacity to pay.
Family made money.
Absolutely.
150
million Ghana cedis. That is the estimated commission that Data Bank made from borrowing. Now, they were too happy to borrow and yet did not make plans to repay. So a new government comes into power. In the very first 2 months, we have to pay close to 10 billion Ghana cedis. And then next year, everything that we collect, if we are not careful, will be used to service the 180 billion or slightly above that is what is needed to service debt alone.
So in the next couple of months, you have to cover the 10 billion.
In fact, on 2nd January, they paid $364 million. Even that was paid only because they had to borrow from the market.
I see.
Next month, at the end of next month, 28 February to be precise, we have to pay 6.1 billion Ghana cedis in debt servicing. And then let me reiterate, next year, 180 billion. So the challenge, cedis, yes. Well, our economy is not up to $180 billion, so it can only be cedis. So the challenges in the economy alone requires additional hands for the minister, because no one individual can surmount this sort of difficulty.
So possibly 2 deputies there.
In fact, it will be justified, to be honest with you. But of course, all of it will still fit into the 60. As for the 60, no earthly force can compel President Mahama to go beyond it. So I have heard the minority leader, for instance, say that he should apologize and do more.
Yes.
Which is a hack back to what President Kufuor did after he had castigated President Rawlings. He only came to power, did more, but at least he had the grace to apologize. He was not like President Kufuor who sought to justify what had happened. But President Mahama is committed. President Mahama, he was in a hurry to nowhere. In the end, he hurried us into retrogression. But the point is that President Mahama is committed to the 60. So even if one ministry gets more than one deputy, it will still fit. But that appointment will be absolutely justified because, and I've broached the issue of the problems just to let you know. Indeed, in due course, all the ministers, and I will be actively involved in that,
right,
in all the sectors, will open up their books to the public. Yes, we do not intend to make one excuse. Indeed, we knew the magnitude of the problem, or at least we thought we knew based on information available. And yet we took on the task of running government. So we will do what is necessary. But it is the people of Ghana who have employed us, basically. They are our bosses, and we recognize that. We need to let them know the country that we are taking over. Yes. But I must stress that we did not start with telling them what the problem was. We started with fixing the problems, like the energy problem, the feeding shortages, the challenges in secondary schools, and what have you. We are actually doing that. In fact, the feeding problem has been resolved, at least for the next month or two.
On that particular point, you see, the charge was clear, even before the end of the year, that GES should consider postponing the reopening date. They insisted and they had the schools reopened. The schools reopened and the reality hit.
Just like they did with the fuel situation, the power situation, where they refused to purchase adequate supplies of fuel for us to mitigate the problems that were going to occur because of the West African gas pipeline closure. They did the same. You clearly did not have food. The logical thing to do is to give yourself time, buy some space. So a week or two, or even say a month's postponement would have boded well, giving you sufficient space to mobilize, to find some food for them. But again, on the very second day of this government, the chief of staff had to, summon a meeting of key stakeholders to find a solution, and a solution was found. And you see, again, it speaks about efficiency. On the first day, when we met the energy sector players, they were told, the meeting started at 10 a.m. They were told that by 4 p.m. that day, they must bring government a proposal to address the difficulty. And indeed, by 4 p.m., they had brought us the proposal. It means that there is quality human resource in the ministries, departments, and agencies. It's about giving them the right kind of motivation and unleashing their potential. I sat in that meeting.
I see.
And I have some energy background, so I understood the issues. But I was amazed about the quality of discussion and how quickly they were able to cobble up a plan together to ensure that, and indeed, it is that plan that we've been implementing. And that's why, as I speak to you,
by the technocrats.
Technocrats, with supervision from the energy minister designated, the finance minister designated, and myself to oversee communication around the matter. And it is that plan that they brought us That is helping resolve the problem. As I speak to you, parcels of fuel have landed, they've been discharged, more is on its way. So the immediate threat that we face has been averted. Unless something catastrophic happens further down the line, we've averted that. Okay. But the point that I was making is that there's a need for the people of Ghana to be told this.
Yes, because
they will be told. In fact, President Mahama charged the first batch of ministers who were sworn in to make arrangements to ensure that the story is told. The point is not to demonize anybody, as the MPP did in 2001. You know, they used to see our paper just to show that things were so bad. They did the same to us when we came into
So
power.
this is just beyond the politics of it. You want to tell us,
there must be transparency.
How the meat has been eaten to the bone.
You see, Alfred, I encourage you and other media organizations and analysts like Professor Jampo and Martin to carry out intense scrutiny of this government. Don't wait for us to leave power before you come and open up the books. Open it whilst we are there. We are a bit more tolerant, as you know. We are not going to fabricate falsehoods to smear you or unleash national security goons to silence you simply because you said something that is unpleasant. And in fact, free speech is guaranteed. It is not government that confers the right to free speech on anybody. It is an inalienable right.
Good.
What that means is that the moment you are born Ghanaian, by virtue of the fact that there's a document we call a constitution, you are free to criticize me, the Minister for Government Communication, dismiss my work, indicate that I'm a waste of time, I'm a drain on the public purse, and that my output is not satisfactory. You should be able to say that and go and sleep easy and wake up the following day and eat cocoa or drink tea and have peace of mind. You should be able to say that you don't like the color of President Mahama's dress, or that a minister's wig is not properly put on, and still sleep easy. Indeed, if the writers of the Constitution anticipated that speech would only be pleasant, there will be no need to guarantee the right. Because if I'm only going to praise Martin, why would you need to do a law, pass a law that stops him from seeking retribution against me because I have criticized it? The framers of the Constitution anticipated that speech will be unpleasant, and that often those who have power want to suppress speech so that their misdeeds are hidden from the public. Justice Louis Brandes, an eminent jurist of the past in the United States, said that sunlight is the best disinfectant.
Yes.
So the thing that keeps governments on its toes the most is constant public scrutiny. The fact that I know that Martin will be up in arms against this government if we do not do ABCD is the very thing that will compel us to do the right things all the time, because we don't want him to be on our case. So President Mahama encourages, all of us encourage, indeed, no public official should ever have the right to put themselves above criticism. That's why I have gone public to express my opposition to even the contempt powers of court. I don't think that a Supreme Court judge, an MP, a minister, or even the president should be above criticism. There should be no punishment for saying things that the president doesn't like, or that the chief justice doesn't like, or the speaker of parliament doesn't like. We must give Ghanaians their due, and this is a government that will ensure that. Of course, we take on board commendation if and when we act in ways that please the public. They are free to praise us. But I don't think that we should thrive or live on praise. The people of Ghana did not vote for us only to come and have an exaggerated view of ourselves. We are ordinary citizens. I don't think that I'm more qualified than Professor Jampo to handle the portfolio I've been given. It is only that my views, outlook, and ideological inclination aligns with that of President Mahama. And I'm a member of the NDC, so the opportunity to serve fell on me. So I cannot come out and build airs around me and insist that nobody has a right to say what they want about me, that perhaps I look ugly, I shouldn't even be in any portfolio. It is their right to do so. As I said, Alfred, your boss has a right to yank you from this set to his office and give you a dressing down today. At the end of the day, it is the resources that he has put into this business that sustains you. Of course, the consideration you give in that regard is the output.
True.
He has a right to dress you down, to insist that your performance is not up to scratch.
Yes.
Same with the people who elected us. When I was campaigning in places like Abuenu, at Bosumayade, at Asumdre, at Abakrampa, at Mori, at Sebu, and I was telling them to repose confidence in me, I was literally pleading that they give me the right and authority to serve them. So I cannot immediately become the MP, become a minister, and determine that suddenly they stop being my bosses. So we bear, and that's why President Mahama has made the point twice in successive swearing ceremonies that the ministers of state must bear in mind that we serve at the pleasure of Ghanaians. And my favorite proverb these days is the one that ABF Husseini rendered. He says that if you have found feathers to pluck on the back of a tortoise, what will you do to a fowl when you lay hands on it? In 2016, the people of Ghana gave a mandate to President Akufo-Addo. At the time, it was the biggest mandate in recent times. He got a vote difference of 1 million votes.
Almost.
We thought that almost. Okay, or let's sum it up to 1 million. We thought that it was an aberration. It's most unlikely to happen again. Maybe something happened that day. Ghanaians were not in the best of shapes that day. So it is an aberration, a one-off thing. In 2020, the same Ghanaians reduced the deficit to 500,000 and then gave us a hung parliament. You see, they were able to determine that some MPs were so bad that they cannot be tolerated, so they should go. But as for President Akufo-Addo, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Perhaps he has done 3 SHS. Perhaps he has good intentions, but the time is too short. So let's give him another 4 years and see if something good may come out of it. After the 8 years, Ghanaians took the view that they have wasted their time. So they bided their time, kept quiet, went to the polls, and inflicted the biggest humiliation ever under the Fourth Republic on the MPP in terms of electoral outcomes. Who is to say that if we don't govern well and carry ourselves well, they will not humiliate us with a 3 million vote difference? So all of us, all of us in the NDC must appreciate what has happened. It is a humiliation of the MPP. But more importantly, the people of Ghana have put down a marker. What they have told us is that they no longer countenance poor government. Why? We are talking about energy sector. You have a situation where a minister of energy at a public function is cornered by a journalist and asked a quick question about when a timetable for load shedding is coming. He tells him that the people who pay his salary, who gave him prominence, and whose money he uses to do everything he does in that ministry, should go and prepare their own timetable. A whole president receives a delegation from a Kunfi who laments, as everybody is doing, about the bad state of their roads and other critical needs that they have. You tell them that because you presented a candidate that they rejected, you also took the decision that you were not going to develop their country. You go to your stronghold, Ashanti region, Kwabia East, which is the place in the Ashanti region where they get the biggest votes. The youth there protest about poor roads. And you tell them that if they like, they should try the NDC. Now, when they try the NDC, can you complain? No. As they did in 2024. No. So we must see this. Exactly.
They don't vote for him.
They don't vote for him. So then he commands chiefs to get up from their seat. Look, if the national anthem is being played and the chief is seated, it is entirely possible that he has lost track of time. He just forgot or it escaped him. Or perhaps he doesn't even know that despite being a traditional leader, he still needs to recognize the national anthem. Okay. You can send an aide quietly to prod him. Oh, please, you need to stand. That's protocol demands. But you throw tantrums on the stage and humiliate a traditional ruler on whose land you are even holding the event. How do you expect the people of Ghana to treat you?
So,
you see,
and yet, well, I am willing to overlook that. For me, we should not. It sounds a bit petty to say that. Forget it. But the way he treated that chief was disrespectful.
Right.
You see, you may be the most powerful person in the land, but you must accord everybody their due.
Did you see how Mahama treated chief?
Absolutely, yes. I was with him in the water region. He said that it's not necessary. It is not necessary to get up for me. In fact, he is the guest. He is the one who customarily must go around to greet you. In any event, you've kept the chiefs there waiting for about an hour or two more than you scheduled to be there. So you should be apologizing. You should be groveling to seek their pardon for wasting their time, not go and command them around the place. So I have made this point to show
So you're tying it into that bit of the
yes.
Yes.
That President Mahama wants all appointees to have at the back of their minds, at the very outset, that there will be no tolerance for disrespect, for mistreatment of the Ghanaian people, simply because they gave us a mandate. Without this mandate, we are ordinary citizens. If today I get your traffic lights and a policeman will acknowledge me, it is only because I was given the opportunity and thrust into the limelight. That's all. That's the only difference between me and Professor Jampo. He can be minister any day, except that he chooses to remain in academia and contribute to the development of the next generation of professionals. That's all. His work is no less important than mine as a Minister of State. That is what the MPP lost sight of. That is what President Mahama does not want NDC appointees to lose sight of. That is why he has taken his time to tell them that he will not countenance it. People are suffering. Look, in July 2022, I used to do a transaction that requires me to pay the equivalent of $3,000 every month. In July 2022, this amount was, in cedi terms, 18,000 Ghana cedis. Alfred, within 5 months, by November, that same payment had jumped to 54,000 cedis, which is an increase of 36,000 cedis. And yet, a whole vice president is able to stand on the platform and tell the businessmen who are suffering, hemorrhaging this way, that it is better to pay 17 cedis than to pay 6 cedis, and that they've managed the economy better. When you do that, you are in short. You see, it is bad enough that the economy is messed up and people are suffering, but to deny it and create the impression that the people you are addressing are Daleks only because you are vice president, and go ahead and say that an economy that cannot pay its debts, that has told 1.3 million people that they should go hang because 240 billion Ghana cedis meant for payment of their interest and principals cannot be found. Look, Alfred, you played the video of Mr. Ajekumado of blessed memory.
Yes.
Kama.
Yes.
Oh. When we were growing up, Kama was one of the foremost industrialists. This is a wealthy man. He is not just he is a wealthy man. Yet, because of bad government policy, it was possible for him to stand in public and declare that he was suffering. Alfred, if Kama was suffering, what about the beggar on the street? Or the hawker selling gum? The people on our roads who are selling eggs to eke out a living. And yet, after all this, you are able to stand on political platforms, dance and sing, jump about, and declare that the economy is better. You have managed the economy better. And go and bring dubious statistics to draw that into the eyes of the public. President Mahama says that will not be tolerated. If there are problems, acknowledge that there are problems. You see, the average voter is reasonable. And I have come to respect the Ghanaian electorate so much because they have changed governments 4 times. They are not static. They are not overtly partisan, as we believe. Even if they support a party, they have capacity to change their minds if they think that the party has not performed. You see, the average voter is reasonable. You see, when there are difficulties, they are able to tell, these are genuine difficulties. But the efforts that the government is putting in is satisfactory. So let us hope that they will be able to. So they will give you the mandate.
When you are honest.
When you are honest, you respect them, you acknowledge the problems, and you demonstrate measurable effort to address the problem. But not what we witnessed under
Islam Mwaka is going to be joining us in a bit. He's a member of the legal directorate of the MPP. But beyond this statement that the president made, are there specific KPIs to keep these ministers in check?
Yes, Alfred, I don't know whether you've either received a copy. We've put it out, a copy of the president's speech remarks at both swearing-ins. In fact, he mentions the appointees by name and indicates the challenges. Yesterday, he told the Mr. Honorable Jojo Pariado, Minister for Youth Development and Empowerment, that in opposition, he created this vast green army who used to wear nicely branded T-shirts. And he was able to use that to mobilize the youth of Ghana behind the agenda of the NDC. He says now, once you've demonstrated that level of organizational acumen in opposition, you must bring it to bear. This time, the youth are not looking forward to nice branded T-shirts to show up at NDC events. They want jobs, so it is your duty to deliver it. He told the Fisheries Minister, Honorable Emiliaka, that you are a long-standing social activist. You come from Shama. There are fishermen in places like my own Mori in Abra Sebu Kamankesi, Miamia, Keta, Jamestown, right here in Accra. There are fishermen sitting on the beaches of Axim who look forward to constant, equitable supply of premix. They want to be able to afford outboard motors so that they can go fishing and fend for themselves and their families. They are not looking for any excuses. So it is your duty to guarantee that. Right. He told the creative art, the tourism and creative arts minister, the Honorable Ablad Gumashi, who you know, before venturing into politics, was an acclaimed creative arts operative. That there's something we call the Blaster experience, which is in our manifesto, which essentially seeks to harness Ghana's tourism potential to attract much needed investment in the sector and much needed patronage of our tourism offerings. That it is a duty to create that and deliver world-class standards so that we put Ghana on the map and reap the economic benefits thereof. So President Mahama has charged there to do that. Okay. He told the agribusiness minister, trade minister, that in the past it was just trade and industry. Even that was a behemoth. It was a problem because it's a complex sector to address. Now, you have to add agribusiness. We want to raise a cadre of agripreneurs. That is young people who have invested in agriculture and are making ends meet. I see. And then finally, he told the local government minister that local government has now been given the added responsibility of managing sanitation. We don't need a sanitation ministry. Okay. Also, they now have to gingerly navigate the very complex world of leading government's interaction with the chieftaincy and religious establishment. These are two powerful institutions. So local government is huge because you have to control over 260 or so districts and municipalities. And then all the issues that come with sanitation management and local level development. And then you have to contend with chiefs and high profile religious organizations. So for every appointee that he has sworn in, he has given specific KPIs, of course, in a very summarized version. But if you look at our manifesto, every appointee is aware of their parts that they are going to do. And President Mahama expects them to apply themselves diligently to deliver this. Because the people of Ghana, and he added in his speech, I don't know whether you've seen it, that Ghanaians have justifiably demanded immediate action because they are wary of vacant electioneering promises. They saw a government that was high on slogans and very low on tangible outcomes. So he does not want that situation. So they must get to work immediately to ensure that they deliver on the mandate.
Will you let him comment briefly on why President Mahama refused to swear in
you see, again, I've seen that she's come under criticism. Again, it is justifiably...
You mean the gender minister?
Yes. You see, I understand the demand for excellence and a better way of doing things by the people of Ghana. They can demand no less from all of us. As I indicated, we serve at the pleasure of the Ghanaian public. So they have the right to have a certain expectation of delivery from us. But I must indicate that because people were not aware of the background story, the gender minister has been treated unfairly in some ways. What had happened was that this morning, President Mahama is scheduled to travel to Angola, Tanzania, and Kenya for some very important government-related business. Because of that, and yesterday he had a heavy schedule. We had to go to Hua and come back. He was even scheduled to be at the swag event. So last minute he had to rope in the vice president to stand in for him. So he said that at least 6 ministers had been approved. And we were in constant liaison with Parliament because they were also approving some yesterday. So he wanted to approve the whole bunch so that he doesn't have to do it, especially because he will be away for 4 days. He didn't want to leave a vacuum. Because the ministers cannot function fully as they should if they have not been sworn in. And the matters that they have to confront with in the sectors are huge.
But they can act too. The Constitution says...
Yes, but it's not the same as being there in substantive capacity. So we were liaising with Parliament to see whether they will finish the approval so that we add all of them to the list and then swear them in. By 4 p.m., and at the time we were in Ho, we were just about to set off to come to Accra, it became apparent the Parliament could not meet the deadline of approving the others. A decision had to be taken. So we reached out to the 6 who had initially been sworn in and indicated that if they were close, they should indicate. 5 of them said that yes, they were within the presence of Parliament, so could come to the Flagstaff House in about 10 minutes. Okay. Now, Momo truthfully indicated that a family emergency had taken her out of Accra.
Okay.
And therefore, it was going to be very close. We encouraged her to come nonetheless. And that if she got there in time, she would be added. If for some reason she could not make it in time, we will do it another time.
I see.
So if you observe carefully, President Mama was very specific in mentioning the names and giving them KPIs as you describe it. So we did 2 alternative speeches. One that anticipated her presence, one that anticipated her absence.
So that's why her name was never mentioned in all of it.
To connect. So immediately we had to switch because we had prepared for that scenario.
I see.
It was to her credit that she showed up anyway, because it was touch and go. Where she was, there was no way, given all the traffic, that she could get here in time. But we were pushing them and saying that if you are able to make it, fine. If not, not a big deal. Next week when President Mama does it, so that is it. It's not that she was late. I know her very well. I can vouch
she wasn't late.
She's a very serious-minded person. In some ways, we were even unfair to her to put her in that situation. But we thought that we could quickly do it so that the president's absence does not unduly affect the ability to perform. So that is the situation. But as I said, we respect public sentiment. Of course, it's not everything
but it's good that you are putting this out there.
You see, sometimes too, yes, if the Ghanaian public had known this, I'm sure they would have tempered their criticism. But of course, they are right based on what they see and know to make any commentary. But I must plead that it is not the doing of the minister that it happened that way.
Okay, this clarity is very, very important because of what has been going on for quite a while, and stories that have been published as well that she was late and so on. It's important that you explain.
Elected not to be there at all. But out of respect for the president, she made an effort.
I see.
I think she got in 2 minutes after the president had started. That's all. And she really pushed it close. But it was not her fault.
Right.
Yes.
It's some 5 minutes top of the hour, 9 o'clock. And
I must indicate.
No, I said it way ahead of time.
Yes.
That
so I have
we're going to
only
quite
5 minutes
some
more.
time with us.
I would have loved to
maybe
be
a little beyond that. But the president.
Just 5 minutes. I beg you. That's what I want. I can't go beyond 9 a.m.
We'll do enough within
I'm sure there will be opportunity going forward.
So the president instructed that all the ministers declare their assets.
Yes, that is true.
Or begin the process of declaring their assets.
I think the Constitution gives 6 months. You are the lawyer.
Says immediately.
Immediately, okay, yes.
But is the Act 5?
That you lawyers say that where there's a conflict, the Constitution is superior.
But the main concern is the current state, and this is why I bring Counsel Lawyer Martin Pebo, because we've both been passionate about this particular subject.
Yes.
The main concern is about the current state of the law itself and as to whether it is fit for purpose in the fight against corruption in the public sector.
Because of my time, let me just take this and then.
Yes.
Well, I think that, of course, we can have an argument about the current arrangement. Essentially, it's become like a mere formality. You put it in there, nothing happens, and then you go away. So, yes, a strong case has been made for some reform. And indeed, President Mama lends himself to that thinking. But, of course, that is a process. But until that is done, we work with what we have. So he has said that in compliance with the constitutional dictates, do it immediately. And that he has actually asked the Chief of Staff to give a deadline by which, if you don't do it, as the accounts will say, wow, and you'll be the commentary.
I see.
The Constitution says do it before you take office.
Exactly.
So even the president saying within
it has even been too magnanimous. Good, no problem. Not a problem.
Before.
Martin, not a problem. But I'm certain that will be done by all the appointees, because this is a presidential directive and you cannot flout a presidential directive and still remain at place.
And the eventual review of that particular law, or as it were, have.
Of course, President Mama is committed. President Mama is committed to any improvements in our governance framework, in our laws and constitutional arrangements. That is why one of the very first things he did was to appoint a non-partisan, highly technocratic team to look at the Constitution. Of course, take into account previous work done and come out with a formulation that is acceptable to all of us. After that, there will be wider consultation. The people of Ghana will have their say through a referendum if it is deemed necessary. And then the right amendments will be made. I suspect that folks like Martin and Co will push strongly for this.
But in your manifesto, you have a certain provision of the conduct of public officers.
120-day.
Exactly. It will be done. let me say that every promise that President Mahama has made in a 120-day pact is attainable. Some of it does not require resources. So it's not, for instance, when you set up this committee, you don't need the resources to name my brother here as a member of a committee. There are some that you will need money to do. Everybody will understand that you cannot raise that money in 120 days to do. So we didn't even make commitments in that regard. But everything that has been stated in that pact will be fulfilled. But this constitutional amendment is important because it is a key plank of President Mahama's campaign. He started saying it right after, in fact, even in 2020, it's just unfortunate that we didn't win. But he has set in motion the process. He has also acknowledged previous work done. Some very good work has been done. For some reason, impediments have been put in the way of the process. But he is determined to remove those impediments. That is why, in the selection of the panel, he has emphasized ability so that it is more acceptable to people who may have doubts about the genuine intent behind this. Because often it is deemed as an effort by parties to write a constitution that favors their own ends. But President Mahama doesn't want that. He is choosing experts, some of whom have even been critical of his government. Very, very critical of his government. But he says, why not? He may be critical, but if he has expertise that can help Ghana, why not?
I was very surprised.
Oh, of course.
Extremely surprised.
When does your work start? When does your work start?
Immediately. I think that it's up to them to determine.
Committee.
Government is available to offer them any assistance that they need. But it's up to them to determine when, how, what they do. We believe that they will do so. And there's a deadline, 5 months.
5 months.
They know from the outset what is required of them. And I believe that they will do what is necessary.
Well, is President Mahama changing the goalposts on his position on this anti-LGBTQ plus bill?
I'm surprised that, and I'm surprised because the media were there. So I'm surprised that this kind of misreporting has gone. What happened was that the Catholic Bishops' Conference came to see President Mahama. And in fact, the Catholic Church is such an organized institution. It's an ancient organization. So even the approach to the issues showed preparation. The first thing they did when they came was to hand me, the president's spokesperson, a detailed list and brief of the issues they were going to raise on their letterhead. So they put it on record, documented it. They raised about 5 different issues. Off the top of my head, I can speak to about 3. The first one was about post-electoral violence. They lamented, President Mahama agreed that yes, we seem to have gotten it right with election management, even if there are challenges. At the very least, we do peaceful transfers of power every now and then. We've never really had a challenge in terms of a government refusing to hand over or something like that. But there appears to be a gap in the way that we manage the post-election. Right after elections, it looks like the government structure collapses. And it creates room for all manner of miscreants to move around to do as they please, even at no instigation. So we must tighten that. The Catholic bishops raised it. President Mahama agreed that yes, it has to be done. Then they raised the issue of the scrapping of the teaching of religious or moral education. And then they moved on to the LGBT issue. They wanted to know President Mahama's position on it. These were President Mahama's exact comments. That one, he knows, as a matter of fact, that President Akufo-Addo did not assent to the bill. And the reason stated was an injunction from the Supreme Court. Because of that, the bill has elapsed. And the law, and Martin is a lawyer, if I'm
that hurdle was clear before the election,
is that once the bill elapses, it's as if there's no bill. So the process has to start again. But the previous bill was a private member's bill. But this time, he thinks we should go as a government-sponsored bill. How can a man who is running away from LGBTQ say that it should be a government-sponsored bill? So he assured that that will be done in due course once the Parliament, the 9th Parliament, sets in motion the processes to do so. And then he agreed with the Catholic Bishops' Conference on their lamentation about the non-teaching of RME. He said that he believes that religious and moral education also encompass aspects of our culture that were beneficial to proper upbringing of children. And that if RME was still being taught, the right values to be inculcated in children at a very tender age, and therefore it will not even be necessary to pass laws to regulate conduct once children are brought up. That is what he said. This then is taken out of context and presented as though the president has changed his mind. No, President Mahama, he has stated his position on many occasions that this phenomenon of LGBTQ or whatever acronym is used is alien to Ghanaian culture. Whilst we respect people's rights to live, they must also conform to acceptable standards. So he doesn't approve of it. It is not something that he accepts. He has stated it time and again. He repeated the call there and said that it has to go back as a government-sponsored bill, perhaps with the backing of the Attorney General. except that he also agrees that the non-teaching of RME is creating a difficulty because we are losing an opportunity to inculcate certain values in children at a tender so that they grow with it and do not depart, as the good book says. So that is what President Mama said. So it is not accurate to say that he has departed from.
We're going to see a reintroduction of the bill, but this time it's going to be government sponsored.
But just that you have to go through the process as it was from the beginning.
It is important for us to let Ghanaians understand that the bill is no longer.
There's no longer a bill. Exactly. There's actually no longer a bill.
But
it has a lapse.
There's no some also make the point that Parliament finished its work.
But the law is that if it does not come into effect before that Parliament elapses, as the 8th Parliament has done, there's no bill.
Yes.
So we are going to see.
You have to start as if there's no bill. Yes.
Or start all over again.
You see, there's opportunity for even greater, more broader consultation, because everybody must be heard. In the end, we will only distill those aspects that we find necessary, beneficial, and useful to formulate that bill. So this is another opportunity to get it right. If in the past there were even difficulties, that is what President Mama has said. Except that this time it will have the weight of government behind it.
And when is this going to start?
Oh, it should. I think that the Attorney General has barely been sworn in.
Okay.
We need to give. Mind you, this is a government that is barely 2 weeks old. So sometimes because of the enormity of our problems, you would forget that we are just 2 weeks old. But what he has said he would do, and he has indicated already, he has set the tone. And I think now everybody accepts, including taking some very difficult decisions. He's done all of those, and therefore there's no need for doubt about whether this will be done or not. It will be done in due course, yes.
In fact, look, I need to apologize to our viewers. Quite a number of your messages and a number of issues that you have brought up as well, which we'll get into. But we have a video of exactly what President John Mahama said at that particular meeting with the Catholic Bishops' Conference on this anti-LGBTQ matter. We're going to play that video right now. I want you to just take a look at this. And then if that is directly sinks into what Felix Kwakyi just indicated, because a number of you had sent messages on this matter. So now the clarity is that the bill is going to come back, but this time around it's going to be government sponsored. And that is very soon, per the words of Felix Kwakyi. But this is what the president said at that meeting.
The people of Ghana will hold us accountable for the trust that they have placed in our hands. It cannot be business as usual. We must be transparent and fair in all our dealings. The anti-corruption institutions will be empowered to investigate and deal with any appointee who falls foul of the law. I expect all of you to begin the process of declaring your assets. The Chief of Staff will announce the cutoff date by which time all eligible appointees should have deposited their assets declaration forms with the Auditor General. I wish all of you good luck in your duties, and I pledge to work with you and give you the needed support, myself and Nana Jane, in the interest of working for the Ghanaian people. With regards to the proper human sexuality, and it's quite a long name, proper family values bill. If you remember, there was a court case that injuncted the speaker from forwarding it to the president, and also restrained the president from receiving the bill. Eventually that case was disposed of in December, I think on the 18th or so. Yeah, so it meant that the injunction had been cleared. But as far as I know, the bill did not get to the president for assent. And so the convention is that all bills that are not assented to before the expiration of the life of Parliament expire. And so that bill effectively is dead, it has expired. I don't know what the promoters of the bill intend to do, but I do think that we should have a conversation on it again, so that all of us, if we decide to move that bill forward, move it forward with a consensus and probably it shouldn't be a private member's bill. It probably should be a government bill with governments behind it after consultation with all the stakeholders to see how we're able to move this forward. But it leads us back to the discussion we had.
Well, so that's
the RME bit.
Yes, that's a religious and moral education bit as well. In fact, that got a number of the teacher unions. I've seen a message from NAGRAT, also from NAT, all saying that the reintroduction of the religious and moral education is critical to this conversation about anti-LGBTQ plus. Please find out from Felix Kwakyi if the minister, if the Minister of Education has a timeline to have that reintroduced into our curriculum.
No, that has not been discussed, but I suspect that it is something that will be discussed. But again, these things cannot be done whimsically. Yes. You need to consult. Yeah.
Perfect.
Because you see, those who did it too may have a reason why they did so.
Yes.
They may, for all you know, have integrated it into other subjects. Perhaps what people want to see is a renewed focus as a standalone subject. Okay. When we were in school, we used to teach that. Not everybody was enthused by it. Some thought it was boring. Others thought that you can better achieve that through the Sunday schools and whatever. So all manner of worldviews exist. So let's listen to everybody. But what is clear is that there is a genuine worry and concern about the lack of focus on inculcating certain values in young people.
Okay.
How we address it is what remains to be discussed.
Okay. Yes. Now, it says, please clarify this.
Sure.
Presidential staffers, are they part of the political appointees that will not be retained in the various agencies?
No, there are no presidential staffers in agencies. Presidential staffers are exactly what they are. Staffers at the presidency. Of course, in grading, in terms of determining their conditions of service, all of that is part of it. Unfortunately, the term was abused by MPP folks. Any and everybody who worked in the presidency called himself a staffer. You see, what happens is that exactly presidential staffers in terms of ranking are considered to be equivalent to deputy ministers. Okay. And then there are presidential aides. So, for instance, let's say Madame Dresbauer, she's a presidential advisor. You can call her a presidential staff, but she's a presidential advisor. She may have 1 or 2 aides who help her with her work. Those 2 aides are not presidential staffers.
They are what?
They are just aides to the advisor.
Paid by who?
Oh, but of course, they are paid by the state. It's just like a minister having an aide. For instance, there's a Mr. Gusitano. He's in charge of the creating the 24-hour economy. He cannot work alone. He needs a secretary. He needs 1 or 2 people to work with.
But you don't add those numbers?
They are not. No, they are all added. If they are political appointees, unless they are people from the civil service. But if they are appointed politically, they will be added to the list. That list that is sent to Parliament every year will capture them. But they are not staffers. They are and in fact, if you look at the list that the MP used to present, they used to call people technical officer, technical this, technical media liaison. That is what they are. But a certain impression was created that merely because you go in and out of your flat bus every day, you are a staffer. No. It is a term of art. Mind you, in the past, people like Nathan Kwao were presidential staffers. And Nathan Kwao was a long-standing architect of Ghana's modern civil service. And yet he was a presidential staffer. But that the term has come to be abused lately. That everybody is calling himself that when they are not that.
So what ranking do they have? Are they also in the
no,
ranking
they are not. They are not. They are not.
Conditions of service?
No, they are not.
They don't get the V8
no,
because
they are not
angry about the
They are
V8.
not supposed to get V8. No. They are
and
not.
the other picks?
No.
Okay. Martin, you have not been introduced.
But you know, no, I have.
But the conversation has been joined.
I have.
He has not greeted anybody.
No, he will do his proper greeting.
Okay.
No, but that is after the Felix. Well, he has to.
But you were berating the gender minister for being late when she was not. Now you are making me late for my next, what do you call it?
Oh, I am so sorry. No, you please. Well, thank you very much.
But I think
I know you had a very limited time. That's a very quick one.
Thank you for staying tuned. This is how far we have come today. Please do stay in because you have more in store coming your way and you cannot afford to miss out. Subscribe and turn the notification bell on so that you'll be notified duly. Thank you.
Momim na PENDREAM TV ase. Now, so far so good. Say open online portal e wo Ghana. Nipa share, nipa follow, nipa comment here. To my best of knowledge, without any biases. PENDREAM TV.